Super Rugby round 16, folks. The final round. It's maybe not as tasty as it could have been because the teams in the top six are locked in, but we could see a few bits of jostling for position. My Blues are definitely under threat from the Crusaders, who will be looking to leapfrog into those top three spots and thus a home playoff match. We'll go through the squads which have been announced, some of the changes, predictions, stats. You guys can let us know your thoughts. Subscribe if you want some Super Rugby chat. We do start with those Crusaders who just seem to be coming right at the right time. Maybe the coaching situation change for next year will be a bit of a distraction, but I doubt it. I still think the Crusaders will be hunting down the Blues, putting the pressure on the Friday game against the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes are coming to town as this number one flying high side, but they have made a heap of changes. So if there is a time for the Crusaders to get a win, it feels like this is it. Their squad is very stable, the Crusaders. Ethan Blackadder switches to 7 from 6. Dom Gardner is going to start. I think, and Will Jordan's out, unfortunately out for the season, injured. So that's a brutal bit of news. But otherwise, the team is very, very stable. It's got more implications for the Crusaders knockout matches, you would imagine, and potentially the All Blacks, the old Will Jordan injury. He had only just come back as well last week, but Johnny McNichol takes his spot at fullback. He scored a couple of tries last week. Christian Leo Willie was tackling the house down. He had 20 tackles last week. They put in a really good effort to beat the Chiefs at home. Cooper Roberts in the 23 jumper will potentially get a debut if he comes off the bench. If they tackle the house down, as I said, like they did last week, they'll put themselves in a really good position. They had 92% against the Chiefs. Very, very tough side to break down. The Hurricanes, geez, the changes. Numi is in, Tuputupu's in, Lomax is in, Hugo Plummer is in. That's your 1, 2, 3, 4, all changed. Shields is in at 6. Flanders, that's Cooper Flanders, not Devon, is in at 7. Polico is in at 8. Roygaard is back at 9, so that's a bit of cracking news. And Callum Harkin's going to take over from Love at 10. Filimone is in on the right wing, and Timu's in at 13. I didn't even count how many that was, but those guys are all players who are changed from last week. So it is a heck of a lot of changes. Roygaard being back is fantastic. As an All Blacks fan, you'd be happy to see that as it's brutal about the Will Jordan injury, but from an All Blacks perspective, Roygaard being back, Tyrell Lomax being back, these are both cracking bits of timing in terms of right ahead of the playoffs. Get some rugby into these guys, but it's a lot of changes for the Hurricanes. Josh Morby, goodness me. I mean, in the absence of Finan Onofo, who is injured this week, he had, 8 defenders beaten, 149 metres last week, scored a try. Absolutely was electric. He has been playing really well all season. Geordie Barrett's still out with he was a scratching last week. He's out with a hammy. Karifi is also out with a shoulder injury. So they have got some injuries alongside Finan Onofo. Their line out is the one area that's maybe a little bit of a concern. They were under the pump a little bit at scrum time from the Highlanders last week, and then their line out across the season's not been great. 82% is one of the worst ones in the comp. So it's not a perfect side, this Hurricane side, but they have been looking good. So Hurricanes' depth against Crusaders' stability. Who are the favourites? Well, the Rugby Forecast algorithm, which goes on the result of the team, not the players chosen, is saying Hurricanes by 5, because that's the form, right? But the bookies, because remember, they're going on, where's the money going? People have seen the Crusaders lineup and the Hurricanes lineup. I'm guessing some money's going on the Crusaders because they are now favourites by 12. Yeah, we'll see how that one goes. Hurricanes are going to finish first no matter what. As I said, the Crusaders actually have something to play for. Second game, Reds against the Drua. The Reds would like to boost their ranking from 6th in the rankings of the Super Rugby table. The Drua, their season's done, so they get a chance to play spoiler on the second game on Friday. The Reds have also made a few changes. Aiden Ross comes in. Salakaia Loto comes in. Paisami is back, so that's a bit of good news for these lads. Lockie Anderson's up from the bench. Trayvon Pritchard switches to fullback. So, yeah, Seru Uru's back in the back row. Some good players to come back. Some Wallabies back for the Reds. So their squad will be bolstered there. Tate McDermott's going to get his second game in 2 weeks. So good for him to build up a bit of a connection with Carter Gordon. And, I mean, Tim Ryan was maybe the guy to watch last week. 3 line breaks from him. He was a real danger man. Plus McCright, who's played a lot of rugby, I feel like, this season. 3 turnovers. I know he got rested, I think, in the game against the Force, but he's got a lot of minutes under the belt, this man. And the number 7 jumper for the Reds, they are going to be favourites. Their tackle percentage against Moana, where they only scraped by, was low last week, 83%. They'll need to kind of work on their line out, their kickoff receipt. There's a few areas that still need a bit of work for the Reds ahead of the playoffs. Maybe this is a good game to hone some of those skills. The Drua, like I said, they can play spoilers. They had some turnovers, one last week. Goodness me. Miro, who's at 6, he had 4. And Salawa, who was a carrying tackle turnover machine, he had 3. The back row for the Drua is looking cracking. Some of Andre is back in the midfield at 13. Mateele swaps wings. Rapitu is into the midfield at 12. And Armstrong Ravula is there at 15. So it's kind of a dual playmaker thing with Valentini at 10. But yeah, as many turnovers as they won last week, they also conceded quite a few. So yeah, not the season the Drua would have wanted. They are underdogs in their final match. 12 points with the algorithm, 15 with the bookies. But remember, they have won a game in Australia against the Brumbies away, so don't write them off. Saturday games, you got the Brumbies in the early game, taking on Moana Pasifika, and kind of like the Reds, maybe a good game to build into the playoffs, try to capture a bit of form before taking on stronger opposition and away from home. The best news for them is Charlie Cale is back. He's missed like half the season and is still, I think, the 4th or 5th top try scorer in the entire comp with 9 tries. They have absolutely been missing that man. He came back briefly for like one game, got injured again. So he's back. He's at number 8. Fingers crossed he's fit. I don't believe they would risk him for this game if he wasn't pretty bloody close to 100%. So he's a guy to watch out for. Corey Toole was busting tackles last week with 6 of them into a kind of arm wrestle game against the Waratahs. The rest of the squad is largely pretty much unchanged. So very, very stable from the Brumbies. As I said, they need to capture some form. They need to bust some tackles. They're like second worst in the entire comp for busting tackles, and I believe Charlie Cale can help with that. As much as rugby's not all about one-man game, he's definitely a difference maker for them. For Moana, they've also had to make a few tinkering changes. Matavao comes in on the bench as the replacement halfback. Penny is in at the number 12 jersey. There's still no sign of some of the veterans like Julian Savia, Nani Lamape, still on the injury list, which is a shame. Last ever Super Rugby game for them, unless something really drastic happens in the offseason. They've just gone into liquidation. So last chance. If there was ever a time to throw the absolute kitchen sink at it, it is this one for the Moana lads. Miracle Whailangi will captain the side from the back row. Israel Leota is sure to pick up a contract somewhere on that right wing again. 100 metres, 5 defenders beaten, scored an amazing try last week. He won't find himself out of work for long. But yeah, they need hopefully get a bit more position and territory, which they struggled with last week, and increase the tackles because they missed like close to 30 last week against the Reds. So yeah, big time underdogs Moana in their final game on the Saturday. 24 points with the algo, 22 with the bookies. Then my Blues heading down to Hamilton. There is something on the line for the Blues as we try to secure that 3rd spot and a home playoff match against the Chiefs. The Chiefs have got the bench is looking a little bit lighter. They've made a few changes there. But the starting 15 is still looking pretty good. There's no DMAC with concussion. There's no Hutchinson with concussion. Jacobson, Vai, and Tupai all being rested. So there's a bit of rest and rotation going on for the Chiefs, but not fully. You've still got Satiti, captain in the side. 26 carries last week. Probably would have liked a bit more go forward in that game against the Crusaders. See if he can get that against the Blues. Rion Paul's into the side at 12. Coombs Fabling switches to fullback. Sinkinson is on one wing. Tamoifalau is on the other. But I mean, the forward pack's still looking pretty good. Jared Prophet, George Dyer, the props. Arcoy's in the second row. Josh Lord, Finau, Satiti. There's a bunch of All Blacks in this team. Josh Jacob and Ratsim are going to pull the strings in the halves. For the Blues, they've also got some guys out. Papali'i is out. Tupulotu's out. Bodie Barrett's out. But there's some All Blacks in this Blue side as well. Sam Darry's having a season. He's one of the top tacklers, and he's one of our key line-out men. He'll need to have a big game and a kind of less sexy. Everyone's going to be talking about Bodie Barrett and how he's not the player he was. But, I mean, Sam Darry just doing the core role stuff as our big man in the second row. Peter Arke's back at 12. Perifeta is going to pull the strings at 10. Rampling switches to 8. Cygnus at 7. And Torian Barnes is going to get another start this week at 6. Cody Vai, Corey Evans, Josh Fisher's Tour, all back into the 23 on the bench. So there's a fair bit of rotation and whatnot for both sides. One thing that's a little bit concerning for both, they both played top teams last week, like against the Crusaders for the Chiefs and against the Hurricanes for the Blues a fortnight ago. Both conceded 11 line breaks, which is just way too many. So both will be looking to kind of tighten up defensively. Chiefs are the favourites with 16 by the algo and 6 by the bookies. So Blues are underdogs for that one. And then the final game, the Force up against the Tars. This one's a dead rubber because no one's making the playoffs in this one. But the Force would love to finish above the Tars. They've got more wins than the Tars, but they don't have the bonus points. So they are below them on the table. It's 8th up against 7th. Those Western Australian lads, I know you want to beat the New South Welshman. George Bridges back at 13 for the Force. Ben Donaldson's also back after a couple of weeks out. Zach Lomax is maybe starting to find his stride. 3 line breaks in their last game. The entire team had 5. So he is a key man in terms of getting that go forward, championing the crib, and he was tackling the house down. The squad is largely pretty stable. For the Tars, they've made a few changes. Callaway is back. Suali'i is back in the midfield. So some Wallabies there. Jake Gordon, Pete Samu as well. So they are bringing back the big guns for the final game of the season. They've either been out, injured, or ill or whatnot for the last couple of weeks. The back 3 still looks impressive. Potter, 4 defenders beaten. Jorgensen, 5 defenders beaten in last week's loss to the Brumbies. They had 15-22 entries against the Brumbies and scored 2 tries. They will need to be much more clinical than that. The Force will just be looking to concede a few less penalties and a few less turnovers, because that's where the Drua had them a bit last week, even though they won. Force by 6 and Force by 5, according to the bookies, or the algo and the bookies, respectively. The Highlanders, whose season is already done, they are on the bye for this last one. You guys let us know your thoughts. You feel like the games of the round are Crusaders, Hurricanes, and Chiefs, Blues, but there's also some form to be found, as I said, for the likes of the Reds and the Brumbies, and then the Force just looking to stick it to the New South Welshmen. You guys let me know your thoughts. Take care. Subscribe. Talk to you guys again soon. See you later.